So welcome to this Transform Zimbabwe press briefing to brief on the current state of affairs, specifically the biometric voter registration, the campaign to mobilize voters and to educate them. So we have a panel from Transform Zimbabwe. I'll introduce them. I'll start from the far right. We have Mrs. Fungai Mazorodze. She's from the Ladies Department of Transform Zimbabwe. So she comes here as a representative of the women. And I will skip the member in the middle. We have Pastor Asan Tembo. He's the National Secretary for Transform Zimbabwe. So he comes here in that capacity. And finally, we have the President of Transform Zimbabwe, Mr. Jacob Chengedzeni Satia Ngarivume. So he is our keynote speaker for this session. So after he has made his presentation, we'll then take a few questions because we are constrained for time, but we'll try as much as possible to capture what needs to be captured. And without wasting further time, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to ask and request President Ngarivume to address the press. President.
Sure, thank you very much, Ngomo. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to this press conference where I will just take you through what we have been doing as Transform Zimbabwe as far as voter registration is concerned in the BVR. So initially I would want to say to you, Transform Zimbabwe as a political party is fully committed to the total transformation of our nation, and also we are also committed to the moral uprightness, transparency, honesty and accountability as a political system. That is very important for me to say. Then on the issue of coalition, let me also report back to you that Transform Zimbabwe believes that only a coalition can win the 2018 election against ZANU-PF. And we would want to believe that a coordinated opposition can win the election in 2018. So as a political party, we absolutely believe that there is every reason and need for opposition political parties to work together, to come together and make or come together under an alliance, an electoral alliance. Having said that, this doesn't take away the importance of opposition political parties to take due care to make sure that we don't have compromised political parties in that alliance. And for that, we also believe a system must be put in place to make sure that we identify the partners that we want to work with, and also we are confident that the partners can pull through to the election without causing disharmony within that alliance. And as a result, we are in the process of identifying those political players to work with. And as Transform Zimbabwe, let me report back to you that we are also working with the MDCT as one of the partners that we have identified in working or building an electoral alliance. We are very particular when it comes to that electoral alliance because we don't want it to break before 2018. You can have partners in that coalition who can maybe walk away from such a coalition, and that would be detrimental to the cause of democracy as a political party. So we are very particular when it comes to identifying political partners. Let me come to the issue of voter registration and the voters' role. Zimbabwe's population of 13 million people has an estimated 8 million eligible voters. However, only 4 million have been voting in the last two general elections of 2008 and 2013. In 2008, over 5 million people registered to vote, but only 2.5 million voted. And this figure represents just a quarter or 25% of the voting population. In 2013, 40,000 registered voters were considered invalid and 3.4 million turned out to vote, as 69,000 votes were considered invalid, with 305,000 being turned away. All these have got a painful circumstances and are completely unacceptable in a democratic society. You can see that You know, our democracy is hugely compromised by the number of people either turned away. It shows the voting system itself or the voting process. Citizens are not fully aware of what are the requirements. Some of the people turned away, did not have the proper documentation. So it means there has been a huge gap in terms of knowledge of the citizens themselves, in terms of what is required for them to exercise their democratic right to vote. And above all, you see, these anomalies can be addressed by a well-planned and orchestrated voter education and registration program. As Transform Zimbabwe, we have therefore seen it imperative that a massive voter registration and education campaign be a priority for all Zimbabweans to vote freely, without fear, and allow all people to effectively register for the upcoming 2018 general elections. Both rural and urban voters will be reached out and sensitized. Transform Zimbabwe has been training volunteers on voter education. These volunteers will be conducting various voter education drives, including door-to-door activities in all communities. On March 4, 2017, as Transform Zimbabwe, we launched the Stop Blaming, Start Acting Vote 2018 campaign. The campaign was launched in Harare and shall spread to other cities and rural areas. The campaign focuses on the following areas. Number one, we want to enlighten all Zimbabweans on the importance of registering to vote. Then number two, the campaign is focused on informing citizens of the need to re-register to vote in light of the biometric voter registration. I'm going to talk about the biometric voter registration soon. And then we also want to make sure that we want to ensure that citizens have the right documentation to vote, which is perennially in every election, you see people being turned away because they don't have proper documentation. So we want to ensure citizens are fully aware of their requirements to register to vote. And not only that, but we also as a party assist them where there's need. We will assist them to make sure they have the right documentation that they need to register to vote. Then number four, we want to inform citizens of the correct polling stations in their constituency. We want to make sure that citizens are aware of their nearest polling station. For under the new system, a voter can only vote at a polling station they are registered, and it's only one. So what we are doing as a political party is we are making sure citizens know exactly where they need to vote. Then number five, we want to ensure citizens periodically check the voters' roll to ensure their names are on the voters' roll. Experience has shown us that in the last elections, citizens would find, they go to a polling station, you don't find your name. You don't find your name. And we want to make sure that we deal with this by ensuring citizens check periodically their names on the voters' roll before the election. I personally was a victim of that. I've always voted in my constituency since 2000. And in the last election of 2013, I think it was myself and my wife. My wife could not get her name on the voters' roll when we had been voting at that same polling station. But of course, I was fortunate enough, I found my name on there. And we had to look for my wife's name elsewhere, and we got it. But it was quite a painful process. So we want to make sure citizens know if their names appear on the voters' roll. Then number five, we want to ensure citizens periodically check. Oh, okay, that's what I just said. Then number six, we want to work with citizens in the diaspora, especially South Africa and Botswana, to help them register to vote in Zimbabwe. You see, we know some of them. We are also fighting for the diaspora vote, but we are not sure whether we will be able to get it. But of course, let me also hasten to say on the diaspora vote, we want to make sure there are safeguards to ensure that if Zimbabwe is in the diaspora are allowed to vote, there are safeguards to make sure that the vote won't be rigged in terms of its transportation to Zimbabwe and in terms of the movement of the ballots themselves. We want to make sure ZANU-PF won't take advantage and actually rig through that diaspora vote. But should the diaspora vote fail to go through, then we want to make sure in countries like South Africa, Botswana, where we've got millions of Zimbabweans resident there, they are able to register to vote. So we've got also a program to reach out to them so that they can come to register, so that by 2018 they are able to vote. And lastly, on the points, we want to ensure that citizens understand the biometric voter registration system. Let me come to one of my main points of this address to you this morning, which is the biometric voter registration. As you are aware, Transform Zimbabwe has been working in the NERA community. In other words, we've been part of NERA since its inception, which is the National Electoral Reforms Agenda, fighting for electoral reform. We realize as a party that it's important and imperative for us to fight for electoral reform. And one of the key electoral reforms we've been fighting for is the biometric voter system. We've got two main reasons why we have been calling for this system as the opposition. Number one, it takes the biodata of voters, which will enable stakeholders to check if people appearing on the voters roll are the real people who are on that voters roll. Then number two, the fingerprint, which is part of the biometric voter system, will also help in the evaluation of the deduplication process to make sure that one person doesn't appear on the voters roll twice. And we know already that one of our main complaints has always been that the dead have been voting, and we have a strong feeling that the dead have been voting for ZANU-PF. So now with the biometric voter system, it will enable us to eliminate that anomaly. But of course, one of the things was that we agreed on as stakeholders was the implementation of the BVR, of the biometric voter system. We agreed that UNDP was going to acquire the kits, the BVR kits that would be needed to register people. And the process had already started and is ongoing. But of course, recently government then announced that they are going to, they want in fact they are saying they want the SPB, the State Procurement Board, to take over that process. As Transform Zimbabwe, working in NERA, we absolutely resist and reject that process of SPB taking over the acquisition or the identification of the company that is going to acquire the BVR kits. We know they want to do it for several reasons. They want to have an influence on the system that will be set up to enable them to register their members in an unlawful manner. So we are absolutely rejecting and resisting that. And we're doing it in three ways. Number one, as Transform Zimbabwe, we are supporting the NERA demonstration, which is on Wednesday, the 22nd of March. We are saying we are mobilizing and galvanizing Transform Zimbabwe members as well as general citizens to come out in the streets and resist and make a statement that enough is enough. We are drawing a line in the sand. We will not allow government to influence the setting up of BVR. Then secondly, we are also signing a petition which we want to take to SADC. The petition, all we're saying in the petition is we want SADC to push the government to uphold to the SADC guidelines and principles on free and fair election. Zimbabwe is a signatory of those, but it's only Zimbabwe among other SADC community members which has not done anything as far as upholding those principles is concerned. So we also are going around signing a petition which we are going to take to SADC. And of course, thirdly, there are also going to be a NERA-led initiative to actually take government to court to respect the independence of ZEC. So these are the three ways and means that we are pushing to ensure that we rescue the BVR system. And of course, let me also say to you, as I conclude my remarks to you this morning, that we feel as a political party that the president needs to take a rest. He is 94 years old, and to see him struggle to work trying to do state business in a nation of over 13 million people, I think is number one, unfair on him, and number two, it's not any good for the nation. If you look at the inconsistency in terms of policy that is coming out of government, you can clearly see that no one is in charge anymore. And we feel that at 93 years, he must be taking a rest rather than to be fighting in the political terrain of our country. We feel this is one of the reasons that the country has absolutely struggled like the way it is. So these are the remarks that I had to you. Thank you so much for listening.
Right. Thank you very much, President. And
okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Firstly, I would want to respond to the question on the petition we signing to SADC. Yes, as Transform Zimbabwe, we came up with the idea of the petition, but which we have since sold to our other partners in NERA, and they've also agreed to sign on the petition so that we can then present that petition to SADC collectively. So other partners are also coming in, and whoever is interested in making sure that they are part of that process to sign the petition to SADC, they are actually coming on board. Then the question to say, why MDCT? Okay, I only said MDCT is one of the partners that we have identified. But of course, we also need to appreciate that the MDCT has been one of the main opposition political parties in this country. And they've won an election before, in 2008, and now we understand by 74% from what is coming out. And we respect them for that as one of the main opposition political parties. And we believe absolutely that a coalition that would not include and involve a political party like the MDCT may not easily reach its objectives. So we feel that if we all unite as opposition political parties, including the MDCT, who are a very, very important partner in the political processes of this country, they've actually, in fact, at one point, they've been the sole main opposition political parties, and I think they need to be respected for that. And they are one of the partners that we are actually speaking to, but they are not the only ones. Sure, thank you. Then the question to say the BVR process has failed in other countries, that is true. PVR has failed. And I tell you, we also identify and know exactly the areas where BVR has failed. One of the key processes to establishing a BVR system, has to do with the kids, for instance, the BVR kids. It's absolutely important that we make sure that process is done in the proper manner. I will tell you, for instance, that we understand that we're not implementing full BVR because we are limited in terms of resources in getting the kits that are necessary, like on the day of voting. So our BVR implementation is mostly on the voter registration itself. So our usual voters roll will only have two additional pieces of detail. Number one, it will have a picture of the person whose name is on the voters roll, and then number two, there will be a fingerprint. So what that means is it's a clearly added advantage. And where BVR has failed, like where in the cases you have referred to, it usually gets jammed on the day of the voting because of the keys and the system, the electronic system itself. But at this stage, we're not having the electronic system, like the e-voting on the day of the election. But of course, we are not putting our eggs in one basket. We fully are aware that at this stage, at one point, some elements within the government system were saying BVR is not good, we're going to resort to our old system. So we equally know that we need to be on the watch out. Otherwise, they may try to rig the system again like they've done in the past. So we are also making sure that we focus on the other areas that we need for electoral reform. And this is what we as a political party are focusing on together with the other political parties in this country. And let me also add on to say, at the level that we've agreed as various stakeholders to implement BVR, it's clearly an advantage given where we're coming from. Because if we have like the deduplication process to eliminate, people who are dead on the voters roll and so on, I think it's clearly an advantage. And after all, we'll have a new voters roll because everybody now will be registered. And that means we have got a great opportunity to really make a new voters roll. But of course, let me repeat, we are not blind to the fact that this system is willing to manipulate all that. And we also know that, BVR with the rigging, with the intimidation, with the threats, the violence, is not any help. So we are also pushing for electoral reform in all the other areas that we are pushing as a political party and also as NERA. Thank you for that question.
Thank you very much. We'll take the second, it might be the last round of questions. Can I give preference to those who have not spoken before? 1, 2, 3.
My name is Lucy Yasin. I'm a freelance journalist. You're saying you'll be signing a petition that you are taking to SADC. But there's a school of thought that is saying SADC has failed Zimbabwe before. What faith, how much faith do you have in SADC as far as solving Zimbabwe's political problems is concerned? And there's also another school of thought that is saying the solutions for Zimbabwe can only be from Zimbabweans. What's your take?
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, my name is Ndondo Zendo, freelance journalist. I would want you to know, last week or last month, we released a press statement where we said that you will be ferrying members from other Zimbabweans from countries such as Botswana and South Africa providing transport so that they can come and register to vote? Do you think it's got the capacity and the financial resources to do so?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's the question.
That's the same question. So, is there any other person who is not Robert? Okay, Robert, you all right. I'll take yours as the.
I've seen some of your programs seems to be urban centered, or I am missing some of the programs that you are doing in the places that are traditionally the ruling party's stronghold, that is in the rural areas. Are you going there, or are you afraid of going there? And if you are going there, what programs are you doing there?
Thank you. President, can I take one lady?
Yes.
Your hand was up.
Yeah, thanks. I had a similar question to Robert, but
Okay.
anyway, my second question will be, you've indicated that generally, I think you've been campaigning for electoral reforms for the past, I don't know how many years, and so far it has not been successful. We are just 1 year before the elections. What confidence do you have that electoral reforms will be implemented? And if not, what's the impact of using BVR in the face of the threats, the intimidation, especially in the rural areas where an ordinary person or a rural dweller is being asked for whatever that they'll be using in terms of the biophysics of a person?
Okay, thank you for those questions. Okay, let me start by the one saying SADC has failed us before. And do you have confidence and faith in SADC? You would see that, what I have alluded to, we don't have one strategy and one approach to everything that we are doing. We have various strategies all fitting and working together. We've got a matrix of strategies that we are putting together as a political party and as opposition political parties. We may have our challenges with SADC like in the past, but honestly, the truth is, they're a regional body that we need to engage. You see, so we believe that SADC is an important partner in the bloc that we can actually take. We can go with our grievances too. You see, so but not only believing that it's SADC that is going to make the difference. No, it's about ourselves. It's about Zimbabweans themselves. That's why you see that on what I've alluded to. Number one, first and foremost, we are having demonstrations as Zimbabweans. We are going to be in the streets to demonstrate and tell, and express ourselves to the government that this is unacceptable what you are doing. So then, of course, we also are resorting to the court system to say, let us take them to court so that we stop them from interfering. And then, of course, we are also signing a petition, taking it to SADC. So we're not believing that SADC can make the difference alone. We believe that they can probably influence in the context of all these other initiatives that we are coming with. And so we've learned the hard way, as you all probably know, that this system sometimes respects nobody. So we approach and fight at all levels that we can as a political party. So that's what I can say to that. Then the question to say, do you have capacity to ferry people? I was actually liaising with our national secretary here, and he was saying, as soon as you were saying, do you have the capacity, he was just whispering to me that we have. I mean, such is the determination that we have as a political party. We feel that, these Zimbabweans need to have the right to exercise their democratic right to vote. After all, they are not in these countries out of will. It's simply because we've got a collapsed economic system, we've got a repressive regime which is not creating jobs despite, lying to the nation that they are doing so. So people are going out there to look for greener pastures. So when it comes to these important democratic processes that ensure that as a nation we build our democracy, it's important to engage them. So as a political party, we are working with the diasporans themselves to make sure that they contribute to the budgetary requirements of them coming in to register to vote. So yes, I can safely say to you, we are working with diasporans, we are working with fellow Zimbabweans in this country who are determined to ensure that they come to vote. And so I can safely say, above everything, we have the commitment and the zeal to make sure that it is done. And then the question to say your programs have been urban-centered, are you going rural? We And with what programs? Our rural programs already, we have our rural programs lined up, which are coming up even this week. Is it next week? I think it's next week, right? They are coming up next week. We've got the women's health care fair programs, some youth programs that we are starting in rural areas. Most of what we've been doing have been like prototype launches in the capital. But now these are then moving to other areas. We are launching our Blaue cleanup campaign very soon. And then we are also moving to other cities with the cleanup campaigns. And also the healthcare fair. We are also taking it to other rural communities as well as other urban areas. So what we've been doing is most of the programs we've started have been a launch. So we've been carefully thinking through those programs, and now we are confident and sure of exactly how we want to move. And this is what we are doing. So the programs are not only urban. We are moving, we're a national political party with structures in all the provinces of our country. So everyone in those provinces who belong to Transform Zimbabwe have been really building up to make sure that we successfully move with those programs in the rest of the country. The question to say, what was it? It was what on success, what electoral reforms?
Yes, to say what they've so far not yielded positive results.
Okay, all right, good. You have fought for electoral reforms before, and so far you have not been successful. That's one of your conclusions, probably. But let me say, I would not say, as the opposition, we have failed on this fight for electoral reform. See, BVR itself, the fact that government is reluctantly implementing BVR is not because they want to. It's because it's one of the electoral reforms we have requested for. So in that respect, you can actually see that there has been some movement, but that movement has been coming as a result of quite some fighting, honestly. So we are fully still aware that we need to keep fighting, we need to keep pushing, and we need to keep fighting in the streets. I mean, NERA now, you can actually safely say NERA is now one of the main blocks of opposition political parties whose voice is heard in this country. And it has been because of our fight for electoral reform. So we continue to hope, even against hope, that we can keep on fighting for electoral reform and ensure that we have electoral reforms before 2018. But as I've said right at the beginning of this press conference, we don't put our eggs in one basket, dealing with a repressive regime like we have in this country. We come up with multiple strategies and multiple formulas, in a matrix, which we try to implement one after the other. We've been using the courts. We have been getting into the streets. We've been signing petitions. We've been doing all these things to make sure that we achieve electoral reform, which we feel we need. We absolutely need electoral reform to ensure a free and fair election in this country. And we're equally aware that it's not going to be easy. So yes, we are fighting for electoral reform, and we absolutely believe that it is possible to achieve some basic electoral reforms that we need before election. Lastly, let me say, BVR is not the solution to the challenges we have in this country. It's not the sole solution. We understand that we have a crisis of voter intimidation. We have a crisis of violence, and all these things that have been happening in our country. We are aware we still need to confront these things before the election. So we are not only focusing on BVR, we are also focusing on the other things that we need to do to make sure that we achieve a free and fair election which can deliver democracy in this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, President, for